Hello, welcome to episode number 15 of the Apostate Alliance. We are joined again here just a few weeks later by ex-Scientologist Chris Shelton and my lovely co-host, Faye the Most Gracious. We are going to, as we always do, before we start the interview, bring up a couple of stories from the world of ex-Muslim apostasy, or Muslim apostasy. And the first thing I wanted to mention was in Pakistan this last week, there was a young man that was being tried for blasphemy. And if that's not bad enough that, someone should be tried for blasphemy anywhere in this day and age, someone went to the courtroom and shot this young man dead. And I will link that story in the video description so that you can go look at the video yourself. It's pretty horrific, and not something we want to put on screen here and now. But like I say, I'll put the link in there and you go look at it. And this other young man who killed this person being tried for blasphemy is now being hailed as a hero by the public in Pakistan. I mean, there's not really much to say about that. It speaks for itself. These barbaric actions are happening in other spots in the world in this day and age, and I, for one, I can't fathom it that this happens. But this is the type of stuff that the ex-Muslims want everyone to know about. That this stuff is going on, and us in the Western world, a lot of people don't realize that. Faye also had another story she wanted to mention about another young man.
Yeah, I just wanted to add shortly to that story, actually. The murderer, actually said that he was inspired in a dream to kill this blasphemer. So there was also that to add to that story, which is just awful. And in the other side of blasphemy, we also had a young man, Ma'ruf Zaidi, who was framed for saying some bad stuff about the Prophet Muhammad by someone he'd had a falling out with on Twitter. And we tried to get in contact with him. We got him in touch with the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain and with Humanists. And he is currently okay. He's being held in a safe house. That was the last thing that I heard. But he is okay as far as I'm aware, and currently there are a lot of accounts who that went dark that day. Like a lot of accounts locked their, they became locked because they didn't know if they were going to be next to be caught for this. But the news about him spread to everyone in his local community. It spread around Pakistan very, very quickly. So it was really, really important to save this young man, and as far as I'm aware, he is okay, but I don't know much more past that.
And our friend Ali Malik played a part in getting him to safety. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And thank you so much for that, Ali. One other thing I want to mention, and again, I'll put the link in the video description so you go check it out yourself. Ex-Muslims of North America had tweeted about a sheikh, and there's a video clip to be seen on this tweet, using the Quran and verses in the Quran to justify an issue we've talked about here before, child marriage. And this sheikh was using Quranic verses to essentially claim that even, a baby 1 day old, it would be permissible in Islam to marry that child off. And another just, crazy idea from that part of the world. And that's not to say every Muslim believes that, but more radical end of Islamic beliefs believes that. Here you have a sheikh saying that this is the way that the Quran reads. What do you have to say about that, Faye?
It's honestly not that surprising that he's come to this conclusion. Child marriages have been going on with the excuse that Muhammad allowed it for a very, very long time. I'm glad and happy to say that most modern Muslims nowadays do not accept it as cultural practice, but unfortunately you do have a nutter every now and then that will come along and say, yeah, you can marry a baby, you can marry a child. And yeah, I don't know. Honestly, it's just weird and gross.
Yeah, I mean that's a good. It is gross. And so, of course, and we did this to Chris last time too. We bring you down, and then we go to the interview, and but we need people to know those stories because eventually, someday, we have to stop these practices. As Faye mentioned, the vast majority of Muslims, do not necessarily adhere to horrible things like that, but we need to get all of them on the same page. But we are here today with Chris Shelton, an ex-Scientologist. This is part 2 of an interview we did a few weeks back. And that first interview, he essentially broke Faye's brain. And we wanted to talk to him again because, as Chris told us, we went for a couple hours that day and really didn't.
It wasn't enough.
Right. We hardly scratched the surface, And you may have seen,
as I mentioned, what happened.
Right. He did predict that right up front, as a matter of fact. And then, just this is the result on Faye of the first interview. You can see her eyes bugged out there. So
I'm wearing a very similar outfit this time as well.
Oh, cool. So what we're going to do is since Faye is all about this Scientology stuff, she just thinks it's the craziest thing she ever heard. But also, I think she mentioned that some of what Chris told us last time sounds appealing. She could see why some people would follow this because of the science fiction type connection to a lot of it. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to let Faye take over, and we're going to see if Chris can put her in a catatonic state once again.
It may be a little dangerous to have me take the reins. But Chris, welcome back. Welcome back to the channel.
Let's see if we can put things back together again this time instead of tearing them apart.
I don't exactly know where we left off last time, but I will say that I don't normally go ahead and share a lot of the Apostate Alliance videos because I know my friends are going to watch them anyway. But that one I actively shared to everyone I knew because I just wanted them so badly to watch it, because people who know me as a person, I'm very, very difficult to surprise because at this point I've seen a lot in my life. So the level of shell shock that you got me to was just absolutely hysterical to all of them. And they have clipped it and kept little bits of it that they really love bringing up in conversations. But yeah, I don't exactly remember where we were at in that discussion. But it was really, really interesting. And even though you did break me, it was just this whole world that I had no idea about. But I think to start off, I just want to ask you, how are you doing? How are you doing in Corona season? And how are things generally?
No, not too bad. Things are going okay. Starting to get some old projects picked back up and finished off, and it's always nice to get some house cleaning done of that nature when you're a content creator and you've had stuff sitting for a long time that you wanted to get to. So that's been happening lately, and channels kind of blossoming in new directions, which I'm kind of happy about. We're doing a call-in show now and stuff, and that's kind of fun.
That's great.
Yeah, and keeping up with the podcast and keeping up with the weekly Q&A and the other content. So it's been busy, real busy. I post 7 days a week, but it's been.
I am subscribed to your channel, but I will say that I have not checked out any of your videos because I want no spoilers. I want it straight from the horse's mouth.
Okay, well, there we go. It's been going good, pretty good. All things considered. I mean, we're in the middle of an election cycle, which is pretty crazy. We have a lot of uncertainty. COVID, of course, is running rampant, and so things are not great. I'm not trying to live in some vacuum here. I understand that the world is a little crazy right now in the United States, but all things considered, I'm glad to be on a relatively steady or stable ground, whereas I know people are not right now, and that really sucks.
Yeah, and you mainly do content creation, so you're still working, right?
That's right. It's my job. This is what I do.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from your professional setup, it's not exactly difficult to see that. Very jealous of that professional setup. Anyway, so something that I feel like the last interview was a little bit more disorganized. I did want to kind of take it in a more like a storyboard kind of direction. So for example, if I was like a non-believer in Scientology, right, and I visited a Scientological church, what would be like the greeting? Like how is one greeted by Scientology?
Well, very warmly and openly. They try very hard to be all smiles and welcome, and we're very open and transparent here, and please come in and check us out. And they don't get a lot of honestly curious walk-in traffic, as they call it. So when people come in, I don't think they're interested in pouncing particularly, but it depends on where you go and what time of the day it is and all that.
Right.
So you might have a varied, experience depending on where you are and the situation and how affluent you look, because let's keep in mind, Scientology is all about the Benjamins.
It's all about pennies. Yep.
That's right. So, so if you come in looking like a, rag doll, then they're probably not going to be as interested in you as if you, were to walk in and be of good appearance and look like you have some money.
They would hate me.
Yeah. This getup wouldn't be so awesome, but they wouldn't. It's not like they're going to give you short shrift. I'm just saying. No. They're going to be, if you walk in 3-piece, looking pretty good, they're going to be like, oh, hey, who's this guy? Right. So.
Right.
But the experience, I'm sorry, I sort of
no, go ahead.
Answer, but the experience is going to be along the lines of trying to show you videos or introductory films or show you pamphlets, or they have a full, in most of the upgraded, renovated churches of Scientology around the world, which I don't know if it's up to half of them at this point, but it's quite a few. They these opulent, nice, renovated buildings that they've been purchasing and working on for the last couple of decades. It's kind of giving themselves a big, huge makeover. And so in those properties, you'll have a lot of audio visual presentations and a whole little sort of museum kind of setup you could walk through and learn all about Dianetics and Scientology with videos and display boards and stuff. And they're going to mostly be interested in having you go do that, and then answer your questions and have you take a personality test so they can sit down and have some one-on-one with you.
Okay, so since the last time we talked, I have actually been interested, obviously not in this climate, but maybe when things ease up a little bit. I am actually interested in going to a Scientological church to see what it's like.
Right.
And I don't know whether or not you would advise that. I'm assuming that you would probably say whatever, you do what you want. But I do have to say, like, I actively talk to preachers and proselytizers because I find religion interesting in general. And I was out in Liverpool last week, and there was just this dude who was just walking around with a wooden cross and screaming Jesus is love. And I mean, compared to that, I think that Scientology has definitely taken more use from like technological advances and making their belief system a bit more appealing to like the bug-eyed millennial that can't focus on anything, if we're going to go by stereotypes. Because like the guy who's like walking around with a cross on every Sunday and just screaming Jesus is love, like there's only so many people that are going to be like, yeah, I want to see that. But then when it comes to Scientology and you're saying that they have like all of these audio-visual tools and then also personality tests, I would find that appealing. Like I would be drawn in by that.
And that's exactly the point. And they position themselves as the group that can offer solutions through spiritual technology. So, you have this melding of science and religion, and look at this beautiful modern age religion that Scientology is, and it is the science of certainty, and it will give you the answers and will give you a tool set that you can use to solve the practical problems of your life. This isn't about faith and belief. It's about practical knowledge you can use right now. That's the appeal of it. That's how they market it. They used to market it very differently. It's been marketed in many different ways, but now, in this present time, that's how they talk about it.
Okay, so I'm in the Scientological church. I'm exploring. They sit me down for this personality test. What is the personality test? Is it rigged? Is it like, has it got like a bunch of leading questions? What is it, and how does it work?
Okay, so it's 200 questions, which the entire design
200 questions?
Yeah, 200 questions. They are yes, no, maybe. So it's pretty fast. It goes pretty quickly. Usually takes about an hour. Hour. Sometimes for slow readers, it can take longer, but and for some people it can take significantly faster if you just like bang, bang, bang through it. But it's the idea with the test is it is called the Oxford Capacity Analysis, or OCA. Also, it's been called the American Personality Analysis and the APA, and it is a completely internally created, made-up test. A woman named Julia Salmon first invented it back in the early 1950s, and then it was revised and gone over by a couple other people in the world of Scientology. It is not a psychologically endorsed or credentialed test, and personality testing itself is a quote-unquote science. It's really a pseudoscience that is fraught with landmines. But the Scientology personality test is particularly objectionable because it does weight the questions arbitrarily, and the questions are all yes, no, maybe. So, a question might be, do you browse through railway timetables, phone books, things like that just for fun? Yes, no, maybe, right? Or, do you consider more money should be spent on Social Security?
Yes, no, maybe.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess. I don't, in a certain circumstance, there's no nuance in the questions. It's
right.
Yes, maybe, right? So
yeah, that's why I was kind of shocked that there were 200 questions, because I would assume that you would have to write like a lengthy answer. But if it's just yes, no, maybe, then that's very vague.
Exactly. And sometimes one of the objections you can have when taking the test is, well, sometimes this answer is yes, and sometimes it's no. How do you want me to answer? Well, just put maybe. Or sometimes, or, this sort of thing. So, or it's yes, or mostly yes, or no, or mostly no, right? And then, or uncertain. So, everybody's going to kind of approach those questions a little differently. They're not exactly easily standardizable questions that you're getting consistent answers on. But that's really the least objectionable thing about this thing. It's the whole point of this is to create a graph. And again, this is all very arbitrary. There's no science behind any of this.
Right.
The test has basically a graph of 10 personality traits: happy, sad, communicative, withdrawn, responsible, irresponsible. Like they have these dichotomies.
Right. It sounds like a ripoff of the Myers-Briggs evaluation.
Well, yeah, except it's earlier than Myers-Briggs. And Myers-Briggs is
earlier,
fraught with problems. But the person this test is just to produce this graph. And the point of this, and this is really where it gets important to understand what this is all about, is that the test is that the point is not to be accurate. The point is to sit you down, have you give them information about yourself via this test. The test has a graph which they interpret a particular way, but the real point is you're willing now to sit down and have a conversation with somebody about the intimate details of your life. A total stranger.
Right.
Never met, right? And you're going to sit down with them, and they're going to ask you very sharp and pointed questions as the conversation progresses from friendly to invasive about this test and how its results apply to your life. So if the result, for example, is withdrawn rather than communicative, now we have something to talk about. Could you tell me about this? Do you find yourself withdrawn sometimes? What causes that? When do you are you introverted, right? And now you're starting to talk about yourself. And so the idea is it kind of is a little bit of a like with psychics, you get a cold
Yeah,
reading.
I was just gonna say they do like a cold hot reading.
Right. So
Um,
this is a bit of a warm reading because you're giving them some information about yourself, and then they
mm,
proceed to just try to take you apart. And the idea is to not just break you down, the idea is to find your ruin. That's what they call it,
right.
your ruin, which is the thing that you believe is
Mm,
ruining your life. The problem you have, that if you could change it, your life would be significantly better. That's your ruin. And they're looking for the thing that you believe is your ruin. And so through communication, through opening up and answering questions and talking about your personality,
mhm,
they are maneuvering around to find this ruin so that they can rub your face in it and
mhm.
show you how bad it is and how it is ruining your life, and then
I
convince
mean,
you that Scientology has the solution to that ruin.
okay, so I understand that a lot of people are uncomfortable with their own vulnerabilities, but I'm not uncomfortable with it at all. So would they find that more or less annoying?
No, everything could be turned from a bug into a feature, or a feature into a bug. It all depends on context and viewpoint. So if you are a strong personality who's aware of your issues
Issues?
and are
Mm,
dealing with them in a, open, transparent, healthy way or something, they would be like, great, then this is for you, because look, we can give you a tool set that will blow your mind in terms of your ability to terminatedly deal with, in other words, handle
oh wow.
all of these problems in such a way that they are no longer problems for you.
Uh-huh. Oh, I see.
Already
Okay.
halfway down the road because you're already dealing with it. So awesome,
Mm,
right? Wouldn't you like some tools that would actually like nail it every time? Right?
okay. So, Chris, my one goal in life, and this is my love language, is annoying the fuck out of everybody. So, if I were to go to a Scientological church and sit down, do this personality test, and they're like interviewing me, what would be the best way of annoying an interviewer? Like, what would they turn their nose up at?
Well, how would you annoy them? You would annoy them
So,
if
like,
you started pestering them with questions about the scientific validity of the test. Or you started
okay, but I'm not looking to like get kicked out. Like what I'm looking to do is just kind of like play dumb.
okay.
And sort of gauge like because I've spoken to because like I have no experience with Scientological proselyte like preaching. I've dealt with Muslim preachers, I've dealt with Christian preachers, and they're often quite disarmed by the way that I approach their arguments because I like very, very simple arguments. But because Scientology is so rooted in pseudopsychology and in leading questions and trying to essentially set people up into a cult mentality, that might be a bit more difficult because I don't know their method of preaching.
Well, the entire point of the preaching is exactly what I've described here. And this is kind of important to understand because it's a sales thing. It's not a matter of preaching at you. It's a matter of convincing you through a small series of agreements that
Mhm,
there is something wrong with you.
mhm.
You acknowledge that that thing is wrong with you and you fully agree,
Right,
right? And that you want to do something about it.
right.
And if they can get those three boxes checked off, then they've got you in a frame of mind where your attention is on you, how you're doing, the areas of your life that are non-optimum or that you want to do something about, and then they offer you the solution to that problem.
It almost sounds like a pyramid scheme.
Well, in a way, yeah. It's not MLM because they are actually offering retail products and stuff, but
Mm,
so it's not a completely internal endless chain recruitment scheme like that, but it is
mm,
a it is a cult. It is a destructive cult, right? They are
mm.
trying to the goal is to change your mindset. get you into this ruined frame of mind. And again, this is answering the question of what happens when you first walk in.
Mm.
And then convince you that Scientology is the solution to whatever problem it is that you are experiencing that you want to resolve.
Right.
That's the methodology of the introductory, preaching, so to speak. None of them think about it as preaching, but that's what's going to go on when you walk in there. It's
Okay.
If you walked in there with simple questions, I don't want to take a personality test, I just have questions I want to ask you about. They'll answer some of your questions, but they're not going to be too interested, because what they really want you to do is read a book and get your answers that way. They don't want to stand there and explain it to you for hours on end. They want you to buy the book and read Hubbard's words. And
This sales pitch is really good. Like, this is a really good sales pitch, because it makes the person buying the idea do all the work.
Exactly. And also, because you invest, because you pay for the book, they're not going to give it to you. And you can walk around and go to churches all over Los Angeles, go in, ask for a Bible, and they'll just give you one. And they get thousands of them, right?
Yeah.
In Scientology, they are not going to give you, they'll give you a couple introductory DVDs, they'll give you some pamphlets, they'll give you some booklets, but they want you to buy the big thick books like Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, or Scientology, The Fundamentals of Thought. And they want you to read them, because Hubbard is the one who does the sales. Right. Through his writing. And he is a much better salesman than most of them are.
So to divert from my, from our example for a second, like, these books by L. Ron Hubbard, how factually correct are they? Because he talks about mental health and psychology and stuff like that. Like, how
they're bad.
They're really bad.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would enjoy watching your face while you tried to get through Dianetics. It is a tedious read. It's
maybe I'll add it. Maybe I'll add it to my wish list, and we'll have like a live stream of me reading it or something. But it would be an interesting thing, because I can read very well. But that's really bizarre that he's written a bunch of books that are factually incorrect, and people are kind of just. But then again, there's religion that's been tossed around for thousands of years, so who knows?
The Bible is one of the most factually incorrect books you'll ever find. But
precisely.
It's the most popular, so what are you going to do?
Yeah, people be people. But anyway, so they've sat me in this chair. I've done this personality test. They're hosting this interview. I've, opened up to them about my ruin, right? And they are now telling me the solutions to my problem. So what would be like the first step into Scientology?
Taking either a class, a basic services class to deal with the subject of your ruin, or buying a block of auditing, a package of, say, 5 hours or 12 hours of counseling, their introductory, type one-on-one counseling services, which they call auditing. I only use the word counseling in a very, very loose sense, only to give people the idea that you're sitting down one-on-one with somebody. It is not counseling in any sense of a psychological or therapist thing. Its own thing, which is they call it auditing. And it's a process where you are given a series of questions or commands to execute in order to address past incidents of stress, pain, trauma, and unconsciousness in your past, or difficult times in your past, interpersonal relationship problems, stuff like that. And sort of address those things with Scientology processes in an effort to relieve the stress and trauma connected with them. These are not the words they would use, but I use these words to avoid all the Scientologies that you have to get into in terms of how they explain what they're doing to you.
Sure. Just like a sidebar, like, how adverse are they to like people recording these kinds of things or like sharing it around? Are they quite
allowed to record any of this?
Okay. But even like the personality test or the interview?
Oh, absolutely not. No way.
What?
This is private between you and me. Now, now I'm going to invite you to look up a series of videos that were done by a guy named Reckless Ben.
Mhm.
Ben and Mike. And these two guys out in LA actually went into the Los Angeles Church of Scientology with spy glasses.
Right.
And they recorded an actual auditing session that that one of them received, and they recorded their interviews with the salespeople and their interactions with a recruiter. And it was, so you have all of this on video with a camera coming from these glasses that this guy was wearing that they didn't know they were being recorded. That was done within the last year. And so that, if you are interested in actually seeing what it looks like, how they talk to you, then that's what I would refer you to. Ben, what they were real gutsy going in there and doing that and coming out with that video. And at first they were just kind of making fun. And then they realized how off the rails and damaging this was. And they kept going until they eventually got caught.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. I think you'd enjoy those videos. I think that would be a real
I think I would, but I also wanted to just go in and kind of record my experience because for better or for worse, I think it's worth experiencing. But I mean, now that I've put it out there, maybe people will be more wary of letting me into the church. Don't bar me from the church. I really want to visit you guys. But
after the Ben incident, anybody in there, anybody walking in there with glasses that look at all suspicious are gonna be noticed.
What if I went in with like a full hijab, like a big black hijab?
I think that would make them very uncomfortable.
Okay.
I think they'd be like, if they couldn't see your face when they were talking to you, I think they would demand that you take the hijab off. I don't think they'd be.
Oh no, they would be able to see my face.
They would be able to see your face.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So not masked.
No, not masked.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I just wear like a wire or something.
Oh yeah, no, you could get away with it. I'm not saying you couldn't get in there with a wire. I'm just saying that after the Reckless Ben incident,
they're going to check in on glasses.
That stuff.
Yeah.
They do not like having that kind of stuff happen to them. They don't like being exposed like that.
Fair enough. I mean, it's religion, so I don't know what they're hiding, and like it's your confessional, so you can share your confessional. But anyway,
it's
so
a cult, and actually, when you go in there, you sign legal documents that specifically state before you go in for an auditing session that the worksheets and the material and everything that happens in that session is confidential, and they own those things, not you.
Is that legally binding though?
It's a legally binding document. I mean, if you agree to it, you say a contract law is contract law. So if you sign over your right to own, possess, or take, possession of the materials that were part of your auditing session because it's the church's property, then good luck getting it back. There has been 1 or 2 court cases where people have gotten their records, but it was a lot of money and a lot of time to get that to happen. So
fair enough. So I have to buy these sessions as well. Like they're not just free sessions that they send you to.
That's
okay. So let's say I have unlimited money, right?
Okay.
I don't, but let's say I do. And I buy these first 5 auditing sessions. So what is the what is the outcome of the first 5? And then what is the next step?
Okay, so the first thing they're probably going to do is either some Dianetics auditing, which is right out of the book, Dianetics, Modern Science, Mental Health, real simple stuff, where they're going to send you back in your past to times of pain and unconsciousness. You had accidents, you got bit by a dog, you fell over, this kind of thing, and relieve the stress and trauma of that through a sort of regression therapy where you're mentally sent back to that time and walk back through it as though you're reliving it now and describing what happens as you go. and you go over and over and over that incident, and if it doesn't release, if you don't feel better about it after a few recountings, then you are sent to find an earlier incident, an earlier similar time. Let's say, for whatever reason, you walk in there and you got this thing about dogs, and you're afraid of being bit by a dog because when you were 20 years old, you got bit by a dog. And let's say this is ruining your life because you work at a dog kennel, or you really love dogs.
I see why this person would be drawn to a religion. Like, why are you working in a dog kennel if you're terrified of dogs?
Yeah, right. Okay. So I'm only thinking this because I actually knew a guy who ran a dog kennel when I was in Scientology, and
okay.
Anyway, and he wasn't afraid of dogs. I'm just making up a stupid example here. But the idea is that you're going to go back and you're going to look for. It's not necessarily a given as to what's going to come up in the auditing session, but I'm just presenting this kind of stupid scenario here that, there's a dog guy who's a little bit afraid of dogs, right? And he loves dogs, and this is his passion, but he's a little afraid of them. Well, you go into an auditing session and you find out, when he was 20 years old, he got bit by this dog. So let's go back and go over and over the incident. It's not really releasing. The guy still doesn't feel, so great. And this is after a couple hours of going over and over this dog bite. Mm-hmm. Well, is there an earlier similar time you got bit by a dog? Oh, yeah, there was this time I was, 12 years old and a dog bit me. Oh, okay, well, let's take a look at that. Over and over and over that incident. It's still not releasing. Okay, is there an earlier similar time you got bit by a dog? Oh, yeah, there was this time I was 5, right? Oh, I forgot all about that. I had forgotten I got bit by a dog when I was 5. Oh, wow, I feel so much better now. I don't have to be afraid of dogs, right? This would be the kind of thing that a person would experience in a Dianetics auditing session.
Right.
And they might experience some emotional relief of having remembered this time when they were 5 that they had completely forgotten about or blacked out on.
Almost like hypnotism, no?
It is hypnotism. That's exactly what it is. But it's couched in a lot of other terms and terminology and methodology that makes it look like something different from what it is. But that is exactly what it is. It is a trance induction with pre and post hypnotic suggestion that gives you the idea that you've had an experience that is life-changing and fascinating, but in fact is really just you taking a walk down memory lane.
Okay.
Yeah. And the earlier similar thing that I described to you is an important fundamental principle of all Scientology auditing, almost all Scientology auditing, because there's many, many different forms of it. But this idea of remembering things, recalling them, and going earlier, similar. This is a key principle of the auditing process and is how they get to past lives. Because I got bit by a dog when I was 2 years old, and that's the earliest time, and it never happened before, but it's not relieving. It's not, there's no release. There's no de-stress. The auditor's going to insist, okay, well, let's keep looking. And until, there is this picture I got of a buggy, and you go, really? What's that all about? Oh, I was riding a buggy in 1879 and a dog came along and bit me in the foot, right? Like, this is how it develops, like a Polaroid picture,
Uh-huh.
And it's really just guided, as my friend John Atack says, it's guided imagination.
It's imagination, yeah.
Yeah, it's guided, but it's guided imagination.
I feel like these Scientology auditors would be really good in creative writing workshops.
Some of them, yeah. Yeah, you get some pretty wild stories, right? Because it's the person inventing the story. The auditor is just demanding or directing.
Yeah.
An earlier similar time you got bit by a dog. You're the one who has to come up with the answers.
Yeah, you're just it's power of suggestion. You're saying you're insisting that there was a buggy. And I don't know, I was gonna ask, does paying for the sessions make it feel more legit?
Absolutely. Cost sunk fallacy.
Yeah.
Cost fallacy, I should say. Yeah, it's the, because you're investing. And when you pay money, and Hubbard insists that you do, because you have to keep your exchange in. Scientology's never free. So You know, it's not about saving the world through charity. It's about saving the world by making the able more able. This is how they talk about it in Scientology, is we are here to make the able more able. So it's all about people. It's code word for people with money, right? But that's
Right. But like I can also see how that might make sense to some forms of people who might not believe in charity.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps. In Scientology, at the end of the day, you are always responsible for your own condition. And it
Mm,
doesn't really matter what the condition is or how you got to it. Somehow, even at a spiritual level, you
mm,
are ultimately responsible for your condition, even if you had a disability, even if you were born that way. Ultimately,
mm.
it's on you.
It's on you. But
Yeah,
that's also a really powerful, like it's depressing, but it's also like a really powerful message that everything is on you.
that's right. That's right. It's supposed to be delivered in an empowering way.
Mm,
The problem, of course, is that through abuse and through manipulation and undue influence, it can be utilized in an extremely abusive way. And that's the problem with these groups, is that they come up with rules and ideas and philosophies that sound good when you paint them in a beautiful, picturesque, sunlit veil. They look very nice.
mm,
When times are tough, chips are down, things are not going so well, they need money, or there's some problem, or you have done something that they think is bad or wrong, then suddenly everything flips, and all of this stuff that sounded so good is suddenly being used against you in an extremely abusive way. Like
mm.
the responsibility thing, yeah, sure, it's very empowering that I'm the one who's the, master of my destiny and creator of my life. But that means if you have an accident or get sick,
Mm.
what did you do to make that happen?
Right. It's like divine punishment almost.
Yeah, except it's not divine, it's
Except it's not divine. Yeah.
right. So it's all on you. So
So
then,
is it all like manifestation? Like you manifest these things into your life?
kind of,
Yeah.
that's one way of putting it.
Mm,
Or let's say the church really wrongs you.
mm,
Do something really screwed up, credit card fraud, or they screw you over somehow.
mm.
Yeah, but that's on you. It's your responsibility. What did you do?
That sounds frustrating, but I'm assuming that they don't do that a lot, or do they?
They do it all the time.
All the time?
This is why it's a destructive cult.
No, that I feel so, I mean,
Every single day of the week, they are doing this to somebody. Absolutely.
that's fucked up. That's really fucked up.
That's the point.
That's really fucked up. Like I would assume like they make a mistake and they're just like, oh, it's your fault. But if it's like they're intentionally doing it like on a weekly to daily basis, that's fucked up.
Mhm.
I mean it's fucked up either way, but now they're intentionally doing it, it's even more fucked up.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we go through this memory lane journey that
Yep.
isn't really memory lane. And how many sessions of that would there be?
Well, it depends. See, you would let's say you bought a 5-hour block of auditing, because it's basically sold by the hour.
Right.
So that could be one session.
Mhm.
I mean, Ben, that guy Ben, who when he first went in and got a Dianetic session, it went for like 12 hours or something. It was ridiculous how long.
Oh my God.
Sessions sometimes go for a long time, but
Wait, so to like 12 hours in a row or like 12 separate hours?
no, he was in for like, I think it was either 8 or 10 hours or something. His roommate was like, what the hell happened? Right. Cause he was just in this room and he didn't know where he was. He was waiting for him out in the parking lot.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite the story, but yeah, when the session starts, it's not done until the auditor says it's done.
Oh, that's weird.
Oh yeah. And you will be kept in the room.
It's like some BDSM shit.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound great.
Yeah, things get a little wild or out of hand. You're going to find yourself stuck in that room until you are done, according to Scientology, not according to you.
But like, wouldn't that make it even more frustrating to like create something instead of like actually find something in you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I
Yes.
know that they're looking essentially for nothing, but wouldn't it, like, that frustration of like being in a room trapped with a stranger for 12 hours asking you all of these leading questions, wouldn't that make it like even more unreliable?
Yeah. That's exactly my point. Not counseling, right? If you're in
No, counseling ends when you say it ends.
right, and you want to
Hey,
get
real quick, I just want to dip in here and say that sounds exactly like what the police do when they get a suspect in a room and keep them in there and
Yeah, that's
disorient them so they make a false confession.
correct. Correct. It's the exact same
I
thing.
can't imagine. I can't imagine like being interrogated for something that didn't happen.
Well, it's like I said, it rarely devolves into such an antagonistic or adversarial situation. Okay.
Mm,
You're there, the auditor is there, ostensibly you're both there on the same page to make you better, to help you out, to find incidents of stress, trauma, pain, unconsciousness in your past and deal with them. And the way that this is framed and explained to you is that during the course of this, it could very well be that you become very, very emotionally upset. In fact, you might even experience physical pains as you relive these earlier traumas. And you might experience some very, very serious levels of discomfort. My job as the auditor is to get you through that, because running through the process of the Scientology or the Dianetics process, we will get to the other side where you will feel better about all of this, and all of that stress and trauma and pain and everything will be gone. And when it's gone forever. So we're going to work together to make this happen. So it's not, you don't go in there with this adversarial relationship, and it's meant to be a team activity. Okay. So to be
mm,
completely fair about how this is all done, this is the attitude of it. But when shit gets real, and sometimes shit gets very real in an auditing session, because you are digging down into the depths of their trauma, of their stress, of their problems, of their life. And sometimes you run into situations that are truly horrifying. There have been things that have happened to people that have been like, oh my God. I have heard things people have said that have been like, wow. And the auditor's job is to not sit there and go, oh wow, that sucks. The auditor's job is to get the guy through it. So you're going to keep running this thing and keep running it and keep running it, however discomfortable it might be to the person, until you get to the other side and get the person, happy and wonderful. The problem, and I'll stress this with about 10 tons of exclamation points right now. The problem is that sometimes people are not psychologically fit or able to deal with their stress or trauma yet.
mm.
And you start throwing them into this with your psychology, pseudoscientific nonsense.
Just torture. It's just
And that's
torture.
what it becomes.
Yeah.
And yet the person is forced to continue and go through and go through and go through this. And the truth is that this form of regression therapy or reliving therapy, whatever you want to call it, this has already been studied and gone over and looked over, in psychology. And we already know that this only works on a percentage of people, not everybody, but Dianetics assumes that it works on everybody the same, because that's what L. Ron Hubbard said. So it has to be true, and it's not true. And so you can end up further traumatizing people, re-traumatizing them in very significant ways, and then adding the other layer on top of denial, because they can't leave the auditing session until they say they feel better about it. And even if they don't feel better about it, they know they're not getting out of this room until they say they do.
Yeah.
So you create a double bind, and you've re-traumatized the person. And that is why psychologically, this is very, very bad for people, and why it shouldn't be done. But that's the full truth of the situation.
That's so sad. Like, people are essentially paying this organization to re-traumatize them
Yes.
consistently.
That's exactly what's happening.
And it's like
Just
you
walk-
don't have a choice of leaving, and they decide how many hours you're in there.
Yeah.
And you have to pay by the hour. Like there is no winning for you. It's like betting against the gambling house. The house always collects.
Okay.
But anyway, so after this regression therapy, like they fixed me, right? What happens next?
Well, okay, so the ideal situation is you're going to have this blowout auditing session where you're going to feel wonderful. Oh my God, I can't believe that. I remembered when I got bit by this dog when I was 5 and I had no idea. And wow.
Right.
You know, which is a very light grade level of trauma, stress, management, right? It's really not that big of a deal that you remembered when you got bit by a dog when you were 5. But for some people, it can be quite significant. So, okay, great. So you remember this and you're all happy. And remember, you've been prepped. You've been indoctrinated, educated before the session even happened that this is how your mind works. And it is an earlier similar chain of incidents that is causing you the stress and trauma that you experience in your life right now. So you're told before any of this auditing is even happening what to expect and what this is going to do to you. So you're primed for the experience. You're not told when you go see a psychologist that if you have a trauma session with a counselor, that at the end of that session, you're going to feel better. You could walk out crying.
Yeah, you normally do.
Yeah, well, guess what? That was a shock to me when I first learned that that's how psychology is conducted, because I had been raised with this idea that counseling sessions, auditing sessions always end in a happy place. And I used to actually think psychologists were guilty of malpractice because they were leaving people in tears.
That's really sad.
Right? Yeah. My education as a Scientologist, as a Dianeticist. So, so you're primed when you go in there to expect this. So everything I said, I mentioned pre and post hypnotic suggestion. That's what I was talking about. So you get primed. You then go in and have this experience, which you expect to have, and it runs exactly the way you're told it's supposed to run. And then you feel great. And then you go see the salespeople.
Right.
Right. And they're called regs or registrars. Registrar means somebody who signs a name up in a log book, and registrars have a sales book, and their job is to sell you more auditing and more training classwork. Because Scientology offers classes and it offers this auditing. Excuse me. So their job is to now sell you more. So you bought 5 hours and you had this blowout session. Great. Let's sell you 25 hours and get you in for more.
But you succeeded, no?
Well, you succeeded with that, but did you think that that was the only thing wrong with you? No. Oh my dear. No, there is a whole lifetime of accumulated stress.
Oh no. This is just a toilet to put your money in.
Bingo! Here we go, right? And then you are introduced to this thing called, after a few sessions and after you've been around for a while and they've introduced you to people and you start becoming friendly with the people in the organization, because everybody is so happy to have you on board. Very happy. You get nothing but smiles and handshakes and back claps.
Are they really happy though? Or is it like really full?
No, they are truly happy because they're
really happy.
Scientologists that when they get one, they're like, yes. So no, they're really happy to have you. But regardless of how they feel, the staff are going to express to you in a very love-bomby way how happy they are to have you around. So you're going to feel, the whole idea, of course, is to make you feel very welcome. Inclusiveness is a really important part of the beginning of this whole thing. So it's all about making you feel very comfortable, unguarded, open. These people really care about you. They're interested in your life. They're interested in listening to what you have to say. They look at you in the eyes when you talk to them. They truly are paying attention and nodding and smiling and listening. So you do feel welcome. That's the whole point. If it didn't work, we wouldn't be talking right now, right? So this stuff does work.
Yeah.
And they're obviously they're trying to draw you in to become part of the group. So they want you to do more services, read more books, listen to L. Ron Hubbard's lectures, which they have on CDs, and they'll give you the stuff or sell you the stuff, and they just slowly, incrementally want you to buy into this belief system that everything that's wrong with you is due to things that have happened to you in your past. And through the Scientology auditing process, which gets steadily more expensive, but is supposed to also become more powerful.
It gets more expensive?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So what happens is you first come in and sign up for, let's say, this 5-hour package of auditing. That only costs you like, $200. Right? So you're getting 5 hours of auditing for $200, $40 an hour. Well, that's reasonable. That's a hell of a lot less than any psychologist is going to charge you. So
yeah, but they're going to do so much more damage than any psychologist would do.
Well, that's not what they're telling you, though, right?
Yeah, I know.
Especially when you go in there and have this blowout win, and you're so like, "Woo, this was so amazing!" So you do that. Then they send you to the salesperson who sells you. Okay, now let's do 25 hours. And I'll tell you what, we got a whole special package deal where you can buy 25 hours of auditing, and you get the Dianetics book and the Dianetics DVD and the Dianetics lectures thrown in. And that's only $500, right?
If ever there was evidence that you get what you pay for.
Right? So, oh my God, $500, that's an awful lot of money. Yeah, but it's your life. Come on. Look at how much this has affected you already, and you've barely put your toe in the pond, right? Look at how much more we have to offer you. You have no idea. This is the first step on a road to amazing life. That's what you're going to have, this amazing life. I have been doing this for years. It has changed my life in ways I cannot even begin to describe to you. And you have about 3 or 4 people talking to you like this, right?
And as a Scientologist, are you encouraged to get more people into the church?
Yes, heavily.
Okay.
Always. They are always trolling to get new members. And through word of mouth, because that's the most effective form of promotion and dissemination. So, yeah. And in fact, there's even a little 4-step process that you are eventually taught, which parallels that whole OCA process I was telling you about. The 4 steps are contact, handle, salvage, bring to understanding. If you do those 4 steps on anybody, you will make them into a Scientologist, is the idea, right? It doesn't work, of course, but that's what you're told. So, you contact them. Hi, how you doing? You handle them. So you first have to find out if there's anything they've heard about Scientology that's bad, or, right? Because they're not going to be open to Scientology if they've heard shit about it or they watch Going.
So wait, if I go in there and I tell them, oh yeah, Chris Shelton is a close personal friend of mine, would they immediately kick me out?
Yes, they would. They would not kick you out, but they would say, why are you listening to that guy?
Okay.
What appeal does that jerk have, right? The guy is an apostate, he's a liar, he's a scumbag, right?
Do they call you an apostate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am an apostate.
Right, you're in the same club.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
Very bad, right? Mm-hmm. They have academics who say so. So
yeah, but are they academics in Scientology, or are they academics?
No, they've paid off academics to say what they want them to say. There's a guy named Gordon Melton who was a total church whore. He was right whatever they wanted. It was awful. Yeah, it was bad. I have no respect for that man.
I didn't know you could pay academics off to just say what you want.
Oh my God, are you kidding? Absolutely, you can.
I'm 100% serious. I thought that academics would at least have some, integrity.
Not some of them, not all of them by a long shot, but there are sociologists and psychologists who work in the field of new religious movement who believe that destructive cults like Scientology should get just as fair a shake as any other religious group, because they have a big thing about freedom of religion, And I'm fine on people having a thing on freedom of religion, but a grossly destructive and abusive group is a grossly destructive and abusive group, and it needs to be called out for what it is. And
Yeah.
they will not do that. So
This is news to me. I thought I could
Oh,
trust the academics at least.
I have a whole video series where I took apart a book called Scientology, which is a collection of academic essays written by non-Scientologist academics, every one of them rationalizing and justifying some aspect of Scientology, and mostly regurgitating Scientology's promotional materials as academia, as academic papers. It was disgusting. I think it's like 20 videos long or something. I took it chapter by chapter and I ripped every one of these people a new asshole because they were so disgustingly intellectually dishonest in their papers.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a rude awakening for me too, because I had trusted that academia were objective, neutral, you know, doing the
And they should be.
work, and they should be. And these guys were not, and it was really disappointing. Yeah.
Can we talk about Sea Org?
Yeah, let's do it. Sea Organization.
What is Sea Org?
The Sea Organization is, and that's SEA, the sea is in the ocean. The Sea Organization is a paramilitary outfit that basically makes up or is the core group of Scientology. If you were going to do the concentric circles of Scientology, they would be at the center. The Sea Organization is a fraternal organization. It's not an official corporation. It's not, you know, there's no articles of incorporation anywhere. It's not a legally recognized business entity. It is this sort of, you know, group of people who have all signed a contract of employment that's not a legally binding one. It is a symbolic one, but it specifically states that you dedicate your next 1 billion years to working for the Church of Scientology to achieve its aims.
Is the leader of Scientology L. Ron Hubbard or Davy Jones? I'm confused.
David Miscavige.
No, I said Davy Jones.
Davy Jones. Hey, we're the monkey. All right, so
no, I was going to ask what does paramilitary mean?
Well, it means faux military or somewhat military-like. L. Ron Hubbard was in the Navy in World War II. He honestly loved boats, loved sailing around, loved being on the ocean.
Honestly, the more you talk about him, the more and more attracted I am to him. I love boats, but go on.
Okay. He was a sailor. He got around on the ocean as a young man. He was well-traveled. He was a very, very well-traveled man. And so in the 1960s, the law was after him. Okay, tax evasion, fraud, things like that. And so he took to the ocean again, and he bought some boats, and they went out on the water. And he took some of the most dedicated, loyal Scientologists with him. I think about 20 of them to start with. This is 1967. And they go out on the ocean, and they're sailing around the Mediterranean and off the coast of Spain and Portugal, and on these boats. And it was sort of this ragtag collection. And at first it was called the Sea Project, and then it became called the Sea Organization. And it became the fanatics of Scientology, the truly dedicated, hardcore, 24/7, dedicate your life to the cause. And the only level of dedication I can compare it to that makes sense to people is if I say, you know, joining the Sea Org is like joining a monastery. Like you give up everything.
Right. It's like monkhood.
Yeah, it's like a Scientology monkhood or nunnery, I suppose you could say. But I'm only using that analogy in terms of the level of dedication. The lifestyle is completely different. It is not at all a monastic. I mean, it's isolated, sequestered away from society. So in that sense, it's sequestered as well, like monks and nuns can be. They live in their own facilities. They live there. They room there. They board there. They don't really have a lot of outside friends or contacts because all their time is spent working on their religion. For the Sea organization, that is Scientology. And I joined the Sea organization in 1995, and I worked there for 17 years. I left in 2012. And it's paramilitary in that there are uniforms of a naval flavor. There are ranks and ratings, right? You have petty officer, third class, second class, first class, chief petty officer. Then you have officers, warrant officer, etc. So you can rise up in the ranks as a Sea Org member. The more time you spend there, you get promoted in rank and stuff. And the jobs they do cover all of the core things that keep Scientology going. So management, promotion, marketing, film production, bookmaking, all the books, all the CDs, they produce all that stuff in-house now.
So it's what you're saying is the Sea Org is basically slave labor.
Oh, that's exactly what I'm saying. I worked there for 17 years. You make $50 a week.
Oh my God. What did you buy with that? Like, what was your weekly spend?
Well, I spent most of it on snacks. My wife bought, that's how she got feminine products. I mean, that's the money you get. So they're paying.
Is it equal pay at least?
What's that?
Is it equal pay at least?
Yeah. Isn't a thing in the Sea Org the same way it is in the real world. It doesn't work like that. But they got problems, but that's not one of them. Anyway, so you get $50 a week. Now, what that actually works out to after Social Security, everything is $45 a week. And that's if you're getting full pay. Often there was quarter pay, half pay, 3/4 pay because we didn't make enough that week, right? Because the money system is very, very interesting in there. Keep in mind, always, with everything I'm talking about with this, right? You have to remember all the time that Scientology is a money-making scam.
Sure.
And it's just using all of this as window dressing to make the money, okay? And for the leadership, which started with L. Ron Hubbard, he died in 1986, David Miscavige took over. And now it's David Miscavige who's the leader. And the entire pyramid of Scientology is designed to enrich one person. L. Ron Hubbard first, now David Miscavige. Everybody else is getting the short end of the stick. Okay, so the Sea organization are the dedicated, fanatical people who are 24/7. And they work. Well, they work 24/7. So you could be woken up at 3 a.m. anytime, because there's some flap or emergency or something.
Did they get meal and board at least? Like, did you guys get like a bed and food?
Yep.
Free?
Yeah, you're on a Sea Org base. You live there. You work there. You don't have a life outside of that. This is not a 9-to-5 job. This isn't working for the Sea Org and then going home at night and watching TV. This is all you do is work for the Sea Org. There is no TV. There's no radio. There's no internet. There's no going out to the movies on Saturday night.
Did you guys at least have like work songs that would help make things? I'm serious.
No, we didn't. I mean, there's a lot of Scientology music, but
there's Scientology music.
Oh yeah, there's albums.
What is Scientology music?
Make it go right. That is the way. There's albums.
Can I just say that your singing voice is on par with mine?
I'm horrible. I have awful singing voice.
But anyway, go on.
I can talk, but I cannot sing. So, okay. So we're kind of all over the place here. But anyway, the Sea Org has different levels to it. It's a hierarchy. David Miscavige is at the top. And he has an inner circle, and he has its own, and it consists of multiple sub-organizations, you could say, that make the whole thing up. And when I say management of Scientology, I mean all of the management that goes on of all the churches around the world. The Sea Org does that. The delivery of the confidential materials, the upper level Xenu stuff, all that, that's done by the Sea Org.
Right.
The promotional materials, the films, the commercials, all that stuff, the Sea Org does that. So they have designers, they have graphic artists, they have film producers, they have...
It kind of sounds like Jehovah's Witnesses, but the Jehovah's Witnesses aren't that crazy.
No, but it is a lot like the Jehovah's Witnesses. And actually, the Jehovah's Witnesses are that crazy, but you got to dig in a little bit to find out.
Well, they don't have a giant slave camp.
Okay.
Is all I'm saying.
Maybe the Jehovah's Witnesses are absolutely a destructive cult too, but
no, they are 100%. I'm just saying that they don't have a massive paramilitary slave camp.
You're right. They do not have that. They got their own flavor of stuff. Scientology really is quite the levels of mindfuckery involved in Scientology are deep and significant. And the Sea Org is kind of the worst of the worst. When you hear about the physical abuses of Scientology, when you hear about the sexual abuses of Scientology, when you hear about the cover-ups of Scientology, or the stalking and the harassment and the dirty tricks and the legal crap that they get involved in, all of that is happening either in or done by the Sea Organization.
Okay.
Okay. Most of the abuses that happen at the public level are not that bad compared to what happened in the Sea Org. Now, there is still, at the public level, physical and sexual abuse, credit card fraud, bankruptcy, like all this crazy stuff that goes on. That does happen at the public level, but it's the Sea Org where the dial goes up to 20. I mean, things get insane in the Sea Org, and I lived it. I mean, I just posted yesterday an almost 3-hour talk where I broke down the prison camp situation within the Sea Organization, because it has its own prison camp.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what are the consequences of Sea Org?
Well, what do you mean by that?
Like, if you break any of the rules, or you're being a dick, or okay, so what are they? What do they do?
Well, you could have physical repercussion, physical punishments, scrubbing toilets with a toothbrush, that kind of thing. Being up until 4 a.m, scrubbing pots in the galley. That's a very common thing, or scrubbing out the dumpster out in the trash area.
I'm starting to understand the military part of the paramilitary. Yeah.
Hubbard says that he doesn't want people to have to suffer, but if they don't get their job done, he can make Captain Bligh look like a Sunday school teacher. Is really how he put it. He said that so punishments can be pretty grueling and pretty horrifying, and this has actually been well documented already in the Going Clear documentary and on Leah's show and numerous places on my channel. Like I said, it took me 3 hours to break down how the re-education camp works. It's not a simple explanation, but the punishments are very psychologically oriented. There's a lot of mind fuck going on in Scientology, because like that business with the responsibility. If you're responsible for every single thing that happens to you, then if you're screwing up on your job, guess whose fault it is? It's not your senior who didn't tell you what to do. It's not Hubbard who didn't give you clear enough instructions. It's not the public that you screwed up on. It's on you.
So I'm guessing there's no snow days or sick days in Sea Org.
No. There's no days left in the Sea Org, period. I mean, you get the last 5 years that I was working in the Sea Org, this is how many days I got off.
None.
Like, days off, right? I had 5 days off in 5 years.
Oh my God. That's horrible.
Yeah, that's the Sea Org. The best case scenario is you get a day off once every 2 weeks. That's it. you are working and your production statistics are going up. See, every single job in Scientology, and especially in the Sea Org, has a production statistic connected to it. So the numbers are everything. If you're a salesperson, it's how much money you're making in a week. And if this week's money is less than last week's money, you're in the doghouse. If this week's money is up over last week, then the line is going up on the graph, and that's a good thing. And we want the graph to go up, 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 up.
Oh, they work you like a dog.
Yes, they do, because a graph can only go up for so long before you run to your ceiling, your production ceiling, your personal production ceiling. But this is not accounted for in Scientology. There's no such thing as a personal production ceiling. So, I mean, it's sort of accounted for, but not really. So this whole system is set up, and really it seems by design. It doesn't seem like it can be an accident.
It doesn't even sound like a slave camp. It sounds like a concentration camp.
Yeah, in many ways it is. It's the attitude, mentally it becomes that. And it becomes what the best description of this that has been used in terms of wordplay was Lawrence Wright, who wrote the book Going Clear that they based the documentary on. And the subtitle of that book is Scientology and the Prison of Belief. And that's what Scientology is it becomes a prison of belief.
Yeah.
Because there are no bars on this planet that are stronger than the bars you can create in your mind. And that's what Scientology does to you, is it puts you through the process of these double binds, which we kind of discussed a little bit earlier. You feel mentally like you are between the devil and the deep blue sea. And there are hundreds of ways that Scientology does that to you, not just one or two or three. It's constantly putting you in these double binds of belief where you're responsible for your condition, but this person clearly hit me with a car. Yeah, but you're responsible. Right? So you're like, and you're kind of stuck in this problem. And Scientology is continually putting you in these mental traps. And the more you buy into it, the more trapped you are. And that's why it's a prison of belief. Right?
So how does one dig their way out of that?
Well, it's hard. It takes a lot of work. I mean, I've been doing this for 7 straight years, and I still am digging stuff up that is, that I'm still unscrewing my mind in some ways from this stuff.
But this has been from your childhood, hasn't it?
Yeah, for me it was. For me it was. I mean, I was involved for decades with this stuff, so I had a lot to untangle. Somebody who only goes in, spends a year or two in Scientology, they're not going to be that screwed up. I mean, depending on their experience, of course. But I was involved for 27 years. So I had a lot to unlearn. I had a lot of stuff I had to undo. And it's been a lot of work. I've had the fortunate experience for me of being a content creator where I've made a living talking about this stuff. And for me, it's been very cathartic.
That's good.
Yeah, I've gotten to get a lot of stuff off my chest over the years, educating other people about this. Other people spend years in therapy, or they just put it in a closet and want to forget all about it. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't.
What do you think the worst things, like top 5 worst things you've been put through, or beliefs that you held while you were a Scientologist?
Top 5.
Like, what's the worst?
Pretty much the worst thing that was done to me was a particular, I could break this down, I guess. I'll break it down pretty detailed. So I guess the first thing, or the worst thing that was done, was something called the truth rundown. Okay. And that's a process of actions. I took a whole video to explain it. Basically, it's a sort of a brainwashing technique where if you are finding fault with or openly critical of Scientology or the administration or the organization or its key principal leaders like David Miscavige or L. Ron Hubbard, right? If you're complaining about them, then you will receive, or you could receive, especially in the Sea organization, this process called the Truth Rundown. And the idea is to find every instance where you said or complained openly about David Miscavige, let's say, or not getting paid. You know, you're making $50 a week. You're not making shit, right? So you're complaining about this. Okay, let's go deal with this. And you get this action done where you have to find what it was that you did, what moral transgression you committed prior to you complaining so openly about Scientology. Because clearly, Scientology is not wrong.
Mm.
You do get paid in Scientology. So for you to complain that you don't get paid clearly means that you have moral transgressions. You have sins that you have not confessed. And it's those sins that are causing you to complain so bitterly. So we're going to find out what those sins are through a very invasive confessional, where we're going to ask you a whole bunch of very sharp and pointed questions of a very personal nature. And we're going to get you to confess until you
just to cut you off for a second. I always thought the one so gross. Sorry, go on.
Until you realize, get this, until you realize that what you were complaining about wasn't true. And in fact, you were just making it up the entire time.
So they essentially just gaslight you to death?
Bingo. That's exactly what it is. It is
concentrated. They put you through that?
What's that?
They put you through that?
Yes, I was put through that. Lots of people were. And
were you ever an auditor?
Yes. In fact, I put 2 other people through that too.
What must have that been like?
At the time, I thought I was salvaging them. I thought I was saving them. I thought I was helping them. In hindsight, I'm horrified that I ever had anything to do with it. Took me a long time to figure that stuff out and undo it, because when you have gaslighting that weaponized, where it's an actual process, it's written down, you do step 1, you do step 2, you do step 3, you do step 4, and you have now completely gaslit this person. And you do it over and over and over again on every single subject that they were complaining about, until they tell you how sorry they were for making all this crap up, and how wonderful L. Ron Hubbard and David Miscavige must be to make such sacrifices for poor us. And oh my God, I was so delusional that I ever complained about the pay. What was I thinking?
That's so gross.
Yeah, that's how powerful this stuff can get, and how dedicated it is to screwing with your head. And when you're in it, you do not see it. It's all reframed so that all of this is a positive thing that you're doing to somebody. Just like the auditing I explained earlier, where you're running somebody and you're re-traumatizing them on purpose. But you don't frame it that way. You frame it that you're helping them. And you can destroy somebody's psyche with this crap. And it has happened. People have had psychotic breaks in Scientology. It's not just happened a couple times, right? And it was actually brought about by the application of Scientology until the person went psychotic. So that's what you're dealing with this activity. So at its real darkest end, that's what you're dealing with, if not outright killing people. So it gets real horrifying. And I keep it fairly light and talk about it in a fairly light way often. But when we really get down into the details about this, it gets pretty. There are human rights abuses here that are.
Absolutely. The last and final question I was going to ask, but I don't know if I need to, before John takes over and allows the audience to ask some live questions. What I was going to ask was there anything positive that you retained from Scientology? But honestly, I don't know if I want to hear it.
I would say at this point, no. But I will say that Scientology afforded me the opportunity to engage in public speaking, to brush up my, to work on and seriously work over my communication skills. But I don't know that I needed Scientology for that. I could have joined Toastmasters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's, I've attributed things to Scientology because that's how my life went. But on reflection, I tell people there is nothing that you can get in Scientology that you can find it outside of Scientology without the abuse, without the nonsense, and without the double binds and the mind viruses,
Yeah.
So I do not recommend or endorse any part of Scientology at this point. Yes, I felt while I was in it that there were parts of it that were helpful to me and that I was getting something out of. And it took me a long time to re-look at that and see that that was really just more Scientology conditioning. Yes, I felt like I was getting something out of it, so I kept doing it. But there were many, many more times where I was cognizant of the fact that I was being abused and that stuff was going on that I didn't agree with and didn't like. But I stuck with it because I was under the mistaken impression that we were saving the world, and that sometimes things had to get rough, and you just have to get through it to get to that sunny silver lining. And the truth is that all the black cloud, if I'm going to use that analogy of the silver lining I was looking for, the black cloud was not necessary. It was a created thing that Scientology was just doing to me. It was just abusing me. And I didn't need to experience any of that in order to experience the good that I experienced there, if that makes sense.
So, and anything that you would have perceived as positive that you gained from that could be found in other places. So it really didn't come from Scientology. It just happened that a couple of these things you learned while in Scientology were useful, in other parts of your life. So I have posted the StreamYard link in the description. We have a couple people in here already that would like to ask Chris a question. If you press on the StreamYard link, you will come in, you will be backstage, then I will bring you on stage and you can ask Chris your question and we'll let you stay here while he answers it, and then we'll move on to somebody else. There's only a couple people in here so far, one of which is Nakasuchi. So please, there was people that had questions. Come on in. Go ahead, Faye.
I was going to say, if there are people who want to come in and you need to drop somebody out, feel free to drop me out.
Yeah. I don't think that'll necessarily be necessary. Here comes Nakasuchi and Lisa for Truth, first audience member to come in. What's your question for Chris?
Yes, I had heard on, it wasn't Leah Remini, it was another one of the Scientology things on TV about the camp things, like if you don't do what you're supposed to do in the Sea Org, they have these little camp things that you're thrown into and you can't get out of. Is that really true? And did it happen to you?
Okay. Yes, it's true. And yes, it happened to me. There are two versions of this camp you refer to. There was something called the Hole, Hole, and that was something that was run by David Miscavige personally, and that was his own little torture session for people that went on for years, and it was horrifying, and that was described in the Going Clear documentary. And then there is something called the RPF, or the Rehabilitation Project Force, and that's what I did. And that was the video I posted yesterday that I expounded upon, and described that whole program. And it took me almost 3 hours to break it all down because it's pretty involved. But I spent 3 years doing that program, and it was absolutely hell.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Is there any specified period for either of these punishments?
No, it's not a specified period of time. The whole, I don't think exists anymore the way that it was presented on the show, because David Miscavige was suddenly exposed. That was never supposed to become public knowledge. So I believe they closed that down. But the RPF, as far as I know, it could still be going. And that was a routine program that was always running in the Sea Org since 1974. So there were always people getting abused at that level. And it took me 3 years. I knew a couple people who were on it for 10. So
That's psychological torture.
that's exactly what it is, as well as physical torture. There's a lot of physical abuse on that program as well.
So, Lisa, we don't have a lot of people coming in. I'm gonna leave you on stage. If you think of something else you want to ask Chris, please feel free. Knock, you came in. Did you have any? I screenshot the question Socka asked earlier, and I was going to ask Chris those questions.
Yeah, I was hoping Socka would still be here to come in. But yeah, if you haven't screenshotted, that's I wanted to address that, and then I'm going to scroll up and see if we have anything in the chat, because I've seen a few questions, but nothing really tagged.
Well, and I'm pretty sure that I screenshot most of them. But let me get through what I have here. And
yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. So Socka Count, and I find this question very interesting, because now if you are indigent and you don't have money or whatever, and like say you go to some Christian, Catholicism or, another Christian type religion, nobody's going to look at you sideways if you don't put money on the collection plate, okay? Because, especially like the Catholic religion, with all the bad that they do a lot of charitable work, for indigent people, homeless people, whatever. But Socka had asked, if you can't afford Scientology's audits, do they have payment plans? How many sessions until they offer you a labor job in some compound to pay off your counseling? And I would add to that, so if you don't have the money to pay for the sessions, will they still try and bring you in?
Yes. The auditing is, they will try to get you to take out a credit card, take out a loan, cash in a trust fund, whatever you need to do. Is there somebody you can borrow it from, et cetera, et cetera? They're going to push you for that. You have to pay up front, although you can make payments until you get the money. You can set, you can open an account with them basically and put money into it. And these are called prepayments, right? Until you get up to the amount that you need to pay for the auditing. And this is a fairly routine thing in Scientology, is once you are established there, you're making regular payments and you are building up your account so you can afford the services, because some of the services are going to end up costing you thousands of dollars at a shot. It gets to be in the auditing that you when you're buying a 12.5-hour block, what they call an intensive of auditing, that can cost you $3,200, $4,000 a shot, right? So they're all about credit cards and extending credit and getting loans and stuff like that. And then as far as recruiting you, yeah, they're gonna start working on that. Product, depending on who you are, what your resources are, how much money you have, etc. They might try to milk you for a while before they get you to join staff or start working for the church. And the Sea organization comes along and does recruitment at the local churches all the time. So a person could end up being recruited for the Sea Org within a few weeks of showing up in Scientology, or it might take a few months, depends on how long for the recruiters to come around.
So to expand on that, so if you're like a poorer person, do they work around your income? Would be one question. And another question I would have would be, if they don't, do they allow you to become indebted to them? To where, like, you're kind of describing, like, maybe they make you pay for it beforehand, but are there instances where they'll let you go through and then you're indebted to Scientology?
No, they will never extend credit to you. Ever.
I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you are just completely poor, there's no way that you can pay for any of this. Scientology's not interested in bringing you into the fold then.
Correct. You're not able. It's all about making the able more able, right? So if you're not able enough to come in and pay $50 for a Dynetics session, or $200 for an intro class or something, okay, well, we'll find somebody who is. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
Wow. So it really is just about that money.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not kidding when I say that. Yeah, it's about the money.
Hey, Socka Count, I see you're back. The StreamYard link is in the live chat. If you want to pop in here, I was just in the process of asking some of your questions here, and then Socka had tongue in cheek asked after that, and here he is.
Here he is.
I'm gonna let him, because he's a sailor in Canada, and he wanted to know if he'd get a bonus if he joined the Sea Org.
Would you get a bonus? Is that the question?
Yeah, I mean, like a signing bonus.
No, there is no signing bonus for joining the Sea Org.
That's too bad.
They pay their members £50 a week. There's not going to be a bonus.
No, there is no bonus. There are.
What would expect to be high?
There's 2 bonuses you get every year in the Sea Org. On Sea Org Day, which is the anniversary of the Sea Org, and I think that's in August, you get a Sea Org Day bonus, which depends on how long you've been in the Sea Org. I was in for, 17 years? So my last Sea Org bonus, I think, was about $500. And your Christmas bonus, which was for me usually about $300 or $400 on Christmas.
Wait, Scientologists still celebrate Christmas?
Oh yeah.
I mean, as an atheist, I still do, but it's for my
No, I
daughter,
know,
not for
but-
me. That's really weird. Like, yeah, grown adults would be celebrating something that they don't necessarily believe in.
Hey,
No,
it's
I know,
a
but like
secular holiday
Muslims
as
don't
well,
celebrate
right?
Christmas,
Yeah,
like
but
it's a
Christmas-
different religion.
It's a pretty secularized holiday at this point, though.
Yeah, it's
It
become
is.
more of a, it's more about money, I guess. Like, I guess that, I can see why Scientology would like it.
I
Keep
have
coming
heard-
back to the Benjamins, guys. Seriously.
I had heard that Tom Cruise's wife divorced him because he wanted to send their kids on some kind of a ship. Can you go into that more of that?
Okay, so Tom Cruise divorced Nicole Kidman because the church purposefully alienated them because Nicole was not so hot on Scientology. She was doing Scientology, but then Tom and Nicole sort of pulled away from the church in the mid to late 90s, and Tom had to get wrangled back in. And when he was wrangled back in, Nicole was not really on board. So the church went to work on Tom and on the kids. They're 2 adopted kids, Bella and Connor, and separated them, alienated them from Nicole so that Nicole could be labeled a bad person, and Tom divorced her. And then Scientology went to work finding Tom a new mate and ended up finding Katie Holmes.
Oh, wow.
And then she married him and found out what a monster he is, and then escaped from his life, literally escaped. And of course,
So wait a minute, Scientology arranges marriages?
they did in the case of Tom Cruise.
Well, and then of course after that, you remember the famous jumping on the couch on Oprah's show there with Tom Cruise. He was so fired up about who they found for.
That's right. That period of time when he was jumping around on the couch is when that happened. And that's when Tom was his most fanatical about Scientology, because he was under this delusion that he was going to bring Scientology to the world and everybody was going to love it and they were going to think he was so smart. And he ended up making a damn fool out of himself.
Yeah. And real quick, I just want my co-host Faye had messaged me and saying that she may have to dip out here in a moment. I just wanted to give her a chance for any final words or tell us if she's got anything coming up here.
Oh, I have nothing coming up. I'm dealing with a lot of dramatic nonsense right now, so there's not going to be a lot coming up. But thank you, Chris, for sharing all of this and walking me through the journey. Maybe I'll be slightly more prepared for when I join the Church of Scientology.
And I don't know what Chris thinks about this, but somewhere in the future, I see a part 3 coming. I mean, this is so damn interesting.
Yeah, I literally said in the side chat, and I meant every word of it. Like, I could listen to Chris talk about this shit all day.
Well, I got a whole channel full of content about all this, guys. So do check it out, because I've spent a lot of time breaking this stuff down.
Chris, didn't you do a show with Lloyd Evans and also Socka Count?
Yes, I did many of them. We called them the 3 apostates.
Well, and here's I want to get back to something else that Socka had posted in the chat, and get Chris's thoughts on this, and then Socka dip in and where you had posted that you believe the novelty of Scientology is worn off, and because of the advent of social media and information getting out there. So is Scientology growing or shrinking?
Oh, it's shrinking. It's definitely shrinking. Okay. It's down to, we estimate somewhere between 40,000 people worldwide.
Well, yeah, and I think that would be the issue with not really having a at least a model for middle class to poorer people, because the world is getting poorer. At least this country is. This country is getting poorer and poorer. More and more people don't have that much money to spend on something like that. It'd be, it seems like they would be behind the rest of the religions who offer a lot of their services for free, and that might be a reason, maybe outside of Tom Cruise's fucking insanity.
Well, remember that it is about the Benjamins, and so at the end of the day, they are now expanding into other territories, like multi-level marketing schemes. You rapaciously work over an area and saturate it, and then you're done. You can't keep raping that area, so you got to go to another one and another one and another one. So they're experiencing more growth or opportunity in Asia right now than they are in America.
Oh wow!
Well, isn't it like?
Oh, go ahead. That's what I was just going to do is ask you to commit, Socka.
Yeah, because the majority of the church, finances is isn't it tied up in real estate? That even though that the church itself membership is shrinking, the amount of properties that Church of Scientology owns is still increasing to this day.
Correct.
I mean, jeez. Like, how long do they what was it? You said there was 40,000 members. How realistic is that for the amount of property that they own? The numbers between actual members and the amount of real estate owned by the church. Probably at this point, it seems to be probably getting pretty close to each other.
I'm not sure how those two things relate to each other. I'm not sure what the question is. I don't know.
No, I'm just saying it just because the amount of property that they're amassing has been absolutely huge, especially considering that there's a lot of people that just sign over everything to the church.
No, people aren't signing over their personal property to the church, but the church is acquiring real estate in terms of renovated or properties that they want to renovate for their church buildings. And that's where they own a lot of property. I mean, the Mormons own more property in Florida than the Church of Scientology does, but its main base of operations is in Clearwater, Florida, and they own half of the downtown there. So that's the kind of property that they have.
I think I would have just automatically assumed that it would have been in Hollywood.
They also own a lot of property in Hollywood, but Clearwater is their primary base of operations.
So I have a few more questions that I earmarked here from people in the chat that weren't able to make it in here. Stupid Horror Energy asks, what OT level are you, Chris?
I am not. I got up to the level of clear as a Scientologist, but I did not get onto the OT levels as a Scientologist. Since I left the church, I've read everything about all that stuff, and I've confirmed the information on the internet is true. But I didn't do those OT levels myself.
And refresh my memory. I know you've told me this a couple of times. What does OT stand for?
Operating Thetan. The word Thetan in Scientology is a spiritual being or a spiritual entity, and that is used. They use the Greek letter theta, so they call a spiritual entity a Thetan. Okay.
Goodbye to Les Nagy. He just posted he has to get out of here. Thank you so much for showing up, Les. Godless Granny asks, do celebrities get a break so that they can get them in? Like, do they offer them a break? Like, like when Tom Cruise first became interested, did he like not have to pay for everything because he's a celebrity and they want that cachet of a celebrity?
No, a celebrity is more able to pay than anybody. They're going to get him to pay. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Tom Cruise first got involved in Scientology through his Scientologist wife, Mimi Rogers, back in the 80s.
Right.
Mhm.
That was how he first got involved. So it's usually a personal connection that brings a person in. And that's always true for a celebrity.
Oh yeah, I remember when Days of Thunder came out. My stepmom hated Nicole Kidman because she broke up Tom Cruise. She blamed Nicole Kidman for breaking up Tom Cruise and Mimi Rogers.
So another recently posted.
That's what happened.
Here's another question that was recently posted. Actually, I can put it right on the screen. Theoretically, he wanted to know, can you get rich if you're a good con artist with Scientology, if you don't believe the stuff, but you just want to make money, or do they only want devoted believers?
They only want devoted believers. If you're not in the mindset, if you're in there on the con, so to speak, theoretically, you could get away with it for a while, but the loyalty checks and tests within Scientology make it extremely difficult to put on that facade and leave it on for extended periods of time.
Well, and I'll tell you, this is how much of a boomer I am. Until you just made that pun, I hadn't even noticed that about Theo's name. So, so I want to throw it back to other folks that are here. If you have any final questions, I've gotten through all the ones I found in the chat. If Lisa or Socka, if you have another question and knock.
Yeah, I got one more. Is that one of the issues that comes up within even within the Christian church is the standard of oversight for counseling isn't present in the type of therapy programs that the church can offer compared to if you were to go to somebody in kind of the professional field. So they get, which is a huge issue because I mean obviously there's that accountability piece, and like I've always been kind of like saying that if Christian counselors or any religious counselor that's out there offering some type of advice should have to fall under the same type of oversight as anybody else. Now within Scientology, that seems to be even more the case. Kind of an argument that if anybody's trying to do any type of counseling, for anybody, that there really needs to be this type of oversight that they have to fall under. But how do you enforce that on any religious organization?
Well, you have to change the laws, the regulatory laws, and you have to either outlaw or regulate pastoral counseling as a broad topic. And traditionally, there's been a tremendous amount of resistance to this. And the churches have lobbying groups that push back very, very hard against anybody regulating them in any way. And they just do it on general principles. So if Congress is not going to get interested in pushing some kind of federal level, mandatory regulation of pastoral counseling across the boards, and they're not, then it's not going to happen. And Scientology falls under that, and so they maintain their it all falls under First Amendment protections.
Yeah, I think that freedom of religion is a huge issue, and I think we really need to talk about it and define it. I wouldn't want to get rid of people's freedom to have religion, but at the same time, when religion is tax exempt status for the churches, or like you're talking pastoral counsel, these things cause a lot of problems. And I think that we should be able to put our hands into these things and at least regulate them at the least, if not just get rid of them altogether. And you're right, you can't, because freedom of religion, we saw that with the mask thing now with COVID-19. Their first thing is, we have the right to be in this church and you can't take it from us because the Constitution gives it to us.
Correct. What do you mean I can't go to my pastor for advice? What are you talking about? Right? I mean, that's the kind of argument you get back in your face.
Yeah.
While these guys are able to push God in such an abusive, destructive way in counseling, psychological counseling sessions or let's not even talk about the child abuse that goes on, i.e. the Mormons right now. So yeah, it gets rough, and they get a lot of latitude, and especially here in the United States, no one is interested in regulating religion, and the religious lobby in Washington is probably, I would probably argue that it's more powerful than any other lobby there.
Yeah, I would say probably. Yeah, I would probably agree with you. Maybe the oil companies, just because they're unlimited resources. But yeah, the evangelical lobby, but not just that. The National Prayer Breakfast. You've got groups like the Family that are pulling the strings of power in this country.
That's right, and because most of those congressmen are believers, that's why.
Yep.
That's why I think at the end of the day, it's a more powerful lobby than even the moneyed lobbies, because they are leveraging belief.
Yeah,
and there is no more powerful force in the human mind than belief. So,
well, and they're getting more, as they say, hearts and minds with the religious stuff.
That's right.
Like the oil stuff, you know.
That's right.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I'm gonna go ahead and say this, and I might get a lot of blowback for this, but I don't really care. As a mental health counseling student, I take issue with pastoral counseling, because those people can really, really, really mess up people for the rest of their lives, and they don't have to answer for that. Whereas people like me, when I get my license, I'm going to have to answer if I mess up a person's life.
Yep.
Yes.
It's first of all, it's not fair. It's not fair for me, first of all, because I have to have a license and they don't. But second of all, it's not fair to that person, because if that person gets messed up, they're not going to have any recourse but to have to spend lots and lots and lots and lots of money and years in therapy to get straightened out.
Oh yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. I mean, you just look at some of the. I've literally done stories on pastors, and I know I do have a final question for Chris, and I think we had another question in the chat, but I've done stories where pastors have been talking to gay men, for instance, and convince these gay men not to act out on who they are, not to have any sexual relations, same-sex attraction, as they call it. And you're exactly right. People spend fortunes that they don't have and years of their life trying to overcome the damage that those preachers have done to them.
That's right.
Yeah, I have that question here that you referenced, Knock, for Chris. Do they avoid talking about Xenu, or is the cognitive dissonance that strong that they talk about Xenu all the time?
No, they don't talk about Xenu ever. That's part of the confidential stuff, right? Remember, there's this line in the sand, and everything above a certain level of Scientology, and that very much includes the whole Xenu story, is absolutely verboten to ever discuss openly, even amongst people who know about it. They don't just sit around talking about it. In all the years I was in Scientology, I never once heard anyone say the word Xenu.
That's
I learned
insane.
about all that stuff after I got out.
So
yeah, that's crazy.
The South Park episode was so controversial. They put all that stuff out, blasted all that stuff out. And then, Knock, you said you had one final question?
Well, yeah, it's about.
I got one more too afterwards. That's okay.
Oh yeah. It's about the intimidation factor of Scientology, especially about people that speak out. I've done a couple Scientology videos, and I've tried to really do some research on Scientology. And the advice I always get from people is be careful. Be careful. And I know I've heard stories of actual possible murders. Do you believe that they go that far, or is it more just intimidation using resources?
It's mostly intimidation. There are two. There's one person who was outright killed by Scientology, zero question about it. But that wasn't because she was speaking out. It's because she had a psychotic episode, and she just ended up, unfortunately, under the care of Scientologists, and they ended up killing her because they didn't know what they were doing. That was Lisa McPherson, and that was in the mid-1990s.
Yeah, I've heard that story.
Shelley Miscavige's mom, on the other hand, died of suicide by rifle, 3 shots. That's a little hard to explain. And she had been disaffected with Scientology. And Shelley Miscavige is the wife of David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology, and he's a bit of a nutcase. So, you know, that's the only one I've ever had real question marks connected with. Could there have been others, especially in the 70s and 80s? Yes, there absolutely could have.
A 3-shot suicide. Yes,
Yeah, with a rifle.
That sounds very suspect.
Yeah, with a rifle. Yeah. You tell me.
Yeah, wow.
It's done. I don't know.
So, Socka, get in here. What else did you have to ask?
Well, with most religious organizations, you find that there's always like a branch that's encouraging some type of reformation within that. So, especially with something like Scientology, where a lot of people that were part of the church that recognize that it is just a huge, cash grabs kind of scheme. Like, is there any actually like devoted people that kind of believe the message of Scientology but disagree with the cost that you have to pay to get to that clear stage or be enlightened or whatever it is that has is essentially, is there any like splinter groups of Scientology that have formed that are still trying to push the same method but in kind of a reformed way that doesn't just lead you like with all the money and shit?
Yes. Yes, there are splinter groups. They are called squirrel groups by Scientology because they're nutty. That's just a Hubbard euphemism. I'm just making a joke there. But yes, there are splinter groups. They are actually referred to as independent Scientologists. That's what they call themselves. And there's probably a few hundred of them around the world.
Oh, really? Not that big then.
No.
So
For like 100 people or like 100 different sects?
Yeah, it's more like about 2 or 3. And as far as official organizations where they've actually gathered and organized themselves into groups, there's only about 2 or 3 of them. I think one of them is called the First Reformed Church of Scientology. And this is classic historical track for any religion, is you're going to bust up into splinter groups and various denominations or flavors. Hubbard tried to avoid it with copyright law and with trademark enforcement, but that's actually the organization that David Miscavige heads up within Scientology. He's not the king of Scientology. He's the head of an organization whose job is to do trademark enforcement. And they are doing a horrible job. They haven't brought trademark. I mean, all these splinter groups are just being allowed to just kind of go on uncontested. So he's really not, he's just sort of taken over the whole thing and is just running it according to his whim now.
So can you imagine a sect of Christianity trying to trademark Jesus?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yes. There are hundreds of trademarks and service marks owned by Scientology.
Yeah, the more you talk about it, the more it just sounds like a business that dabbles in religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hey, I didn't do my job at the beginning, and I asked Chris before we went live to make sure I had the information correct to introduce him, and I realized as we were going on I had not introduced him. Chris, and we have all the links to this stuff in the video description. Chris is a published author. He has written the book Scientology from A to Xenu. And the link to Amazon to purchase that book is in the description. He does a weekly thing on his channel. I believe he said it's on Sundays.
I do a number of weekly things on my channel. Yes. Right. Call-in show on Wednesdays, podcast on Saturday, critical Q&A show on Sundays.
And then the podcast is Sensibly Speaking, correct?
Yes, Sensibly Speaking podcast.
And also, link in the description. Chris is on Twitter. Go and follow him on Twitter. He has a lot of funny stuff and good stuff to say on Twitter that not all of it deals with Scientology. So I urge you to go follow him. I want to thank the 2 audience members that came in and asked them. Lisa for Truth, I know, has a YouTube channel. Go and check her channel out. Do you have anything coming up, Lisa, that you'd like everybody to know about?
I'm just keeping on with my Jehovah's Witness series, and I'm also trying to start a new series about the myths of the Greek, Norse, Roman, Celtic, whatever else, that's out there. But, I have kind of gotten off doing my everyday uploads. Number 1, because they're longer, but number 2, because I'm taking care of my dad. So, just I basically upload whenever I can. Sometimes it's every day, sometimes not. So, just if you like my channel, just go on and see if I've got anything new.
Well, and because you were here with us for a period of time, I will make sure and get the link to your channel in the video description. Socka, do you have any final words? Do you have anything coming up you'd like folks to know about?
Yeah, no, I don't got any final words. I find this topic fascinating. I've been kind of doing. I did a little bit of looking into Scientology stuff a few years back when it was really popular, when a lot of the documentaries were coming out. It's messed up. It's always kind of interesting to listen to though. And there is the one thing I think that's kind of this routine trend is that with a lot of these religions is it's really easy for people to sit back and take a look at Scientology and say things like, well, it's nutty, it's crazy to forget. But I've always thought it was kind of fascinating that I don't think it's any more crazy than any other organization or any religious organization out there. Just the tactics obviously are less or kind of more frowned upon. I'm going to be doing a In Time with Nick Suter sometime this month, I believe, on the kind of foundational ethics of different political ideologies. And that's pretty much the only thing I have coming up.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Socka Count's, sorry, John. If you haven't seen Socka Count's appearance on ProLib's channel for Requiem of the GDC, that has probably been my favorite one of those streams so far. So you guys should go check that out.
Well, and I just want to point out to the audience that was my friend Socka Count not having any final words. And so I know Nakasuchi's got something coming up later today. So tell folks about that.
Yeah, later today I'll be going into battle with CJ Cox. You might have saw him on Scholar Fiction yesterday. We had the debate about taking down Confederate statues on Modern Day Debate. Tuesday, possibly, my favorite NIFB, Guzman, might be coming on. I got to get with him. And then Thursday night at 7:30 Eastern, Godless Engineer will be coming on to talk mythicism, and I'm super excited about that one.
Yeah, look, that will be a good one. And a few things I want folks to know about is as far as the Apostate Alliance goes, now next week we're going to have another ex-Muslim, Jimmy London, a real good friend of Faye's. He has gotten busy and he had to beg off and move his appearance to September. So we're going to be joined by ex-Christian Jake 4D next Sunday. The rest of the month of August, 16th of August, Eve the Apple, an ex-Muslim, will be joining us. On the 23rd of August, we will have a person here from ex-Muslims of Norway. And the last Sunday of the month, 30th of August, we're going to be joined by Ali Ahmed.
Awesome.
As far as myself goes, we are going to I am going to be on I'm going to say her name, Godless Granny.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I'm going to be on Godless Grannies on Tuesday night at 5 Eastern, and we're going to discuss the legalization of drugs.
I'm actually off on Tuesday, so I'll be able to check that out.
Awesome. Again, thank you to everybody in the live chat for stopping in. Thanks to Oz from the Atheist Roundtable. He showed up here. He's one of our past guests. You can find the Apostate Alliance playlist on this channel, and I urge you to check that out. And just remember, the Apostate Alliance is where you can feel free to not believe.